For months now, multiple US leaders have started to show signs of physical and cognitive decline. There are literal geriatric patients in office, and both sides of the aisle are concerned about it. What if the most dreadful thing possible happened? A lawmaker dies in office instead of in retirement with their loved ones. And then it actually happened. Sitting Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein recently passed away at the age of, wait for it, 90 years old. She had a big legacy, a long, storied career in politics, and some iconic moments, both good and bad. You may remember her for this episode.
We're here asking you to vote yes on the resolution for the Green New Deal because that is the only
That resolution will not pass the Senate.
The government is supposed to be for the people and by the people and all
You know
for
what's interesting about this group is I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway. I don't respond to that.
But you might also remember her for this clip.
When you read your speeches, the conclusion one draws is that the dogma lives loudly within you.
Like President Biden and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, Feinstein had been serving in government for decades. She chaired a subcommittee up until the moment she passed. When you're in office until that old age, at some point you break down. Feinstein spent many months this year recovering from shingles, and yet she kept coming back to work. She was literally being carted into Congress in a wheelchair. The Democratic majority in the Senate was so thin that it was critical that she somehow show up to vote. She didn't even have her own power of attorney. She handed that off to her daughter in August. And yet, she had the responsibility of a US senator? Her aides had to help her perform basic duties of her job, like voting.
Yeah, just say aye. Okay, just aye.
And Feinstein missed a lot of the votes of the last few years. Given her frailty, it's unclear whether Feinstein really wanted to keep this up. But the pressures of partisan politics won, depriving her of her sunset years. And it's not just Feinstein. Other seniors in federal government have had debilitating medical conditions that should have put them out of commission for good, but they somehow stayed in office. McConnell was hospitalized after a concussion and rib injury after falling in March. And there seemed to be lingering after effects that caused him to freeze mid-sentence while addressing groups of reporters.
That's right.
President Biden, of course, is showing strong signs of cognitive decline. Back in 2001, he delivered a speech in the Senate the day after 9/11 condemning the tragedy. It was sharp and emotional.
For in this dastardly act, they may have done what no other group of people could possibly have done, and that is unite the civilized world.
By that point, he had already been serving in the Senate for nearly 30 years. Flash forward to this year's anniversary of 9/11.
Ground Zero in New York, and I remember standing there the next day.
Biden straight up forgets that he was even in Congress on that day 22 years ago. The charitable view is, he's unwell. All of this is absurd though, so of course people have been poking fun at it. And it's a serious 2024 campaign issue because it's a political liability. GOP presidential contender Nikki Haley even suggested mental competency tests for politicians over 75. I'm fully on board.
Not a single solitary Biden man that is younger than any Biden woman.
We can't have this in the Oval Office. While the Founding Fathers valued wisdom, I don't think they would advocate for politicians to hold office until they literally died in them. We can't have a bunch of senators in name only propped up by their aides. Retirement with dignity is what everybody deserves. These politicians should enjoy their final years in peace and quiet, surrounded by their family and friends, rather than interns in the Senate. But more importantly, serving until death is a disservice to the country. It'd be one thing if they were Supreme Court justices who are supposed to be serving life terms, but that's not who we're talking about. This is the president and legislators. they should not be in office forever. I don't know, maybe there should be an age cap. I feel like the bare minimum is to be physically and mentally with it. In an ideal world, politicians would have the self-awareness to know when to call it quits. And it's sometimes a difficult truth for them to accept, but it doesn't make it any less true. I've got to give Senator Mitt Romney credit for not running for re-election.
I've spent my last 25 years in public service of one kind or another. At the end of another term, I'd be in my mid-80s. Frankly, it's time for a new generation of leaders.
That's ending a career with dignity. George Washington stepped down from the presidency at 64 after 2 terms, setting a precedent for all his successors, except for FDR. In his 1796 farewell address, Washington reflected on the lessons and mistakes of his tenure before making his case for retirement. Though, in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of intentional error. I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors. Whatever they may be, I fervently beseech the Almighty to avert or mitigate the evils to which they may tend. This is the line that Hamilton cut? Really? I wonder why. I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will never cease to view them with indulgence, and that after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as myself must soon be to the mansions of rest. I wish our seniors in office would take his advice. And yet today, not only is Washington's noble precedent being ignored, the very symbols of liberty that he fought for are under attack by the radical left, which claims that the "Don't Tread on Me" flag is a racist dog whistle.